Suddenly I was getting so much positivity, all the hate and trolls turned to like love and, oh, we celebrate you because you're trans, you know, and I thought it was, you know, for somebody that wanted that validation, which many young people do that change their genders, it felt good, you know, and then I felt, you know, finally people actually like me or they think I look nice and, you know, so that kind of affirmed that identity. And then I just got to a point where I was like, okay, what's the next surgery? You know, do I go down the next extreme, which is doing the body surgery? And I was seriously considering it and I did a few consultations. And then I got to a point where I was like, well, when am I going to stop? You know, it's been like 10 years of doing different surgeries, trying to change my identity. Am I going to stop or am I going to end up dying on the operating table?
Hey cousins, if you've ever been on the internet or have even watched TV, you know exactly who my guest today is. He's a global media personality and prolific author. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Oli London.
So great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Oli.
Cheers. You were just saying about your smoothie wasn't a great taste, right?
How are you going to call me out?
I'm going to call you out on camera.
Okay, because I don't want to blow the potential of my dream Air One deal, but this smoothie is not good. I'm still going to sip it anyway, but this is the most funk nasty Air One smoothie I've ever had. This Boca mint one, I know it's a limited edition one. Let's keep it limited, chair. But L'chaim.
Sorry for calling out, but yeah, L'chaim.
Clocking my teeth the second we get on camera.
Been waiting for that moment.
Oh, yes.
Just kidding.
I literally told Ali, I was like, I'm going to pretend to like this on camera because I don't want to, you know, make Air One upset.
And I was like, come on, let's be honest here.
You were so funny for that. So just for backstory, so people know how we know each other, you know, I had followed you for a while and it didn't even click to me when we first met in Israel. So we were both there for the JNS conference and went on a tour with Jerusalem. And you came over and you're like, hi, I'm Ali. And then it dawns on me, I'm like, why does he look and sound familiar? And then I'm eating breakfast. I remember I'm eating this delicious salmon eggs Benedict at the Waldorf Astoria in Jerusalem. Shout out to them. And I look up, I'm like, that is Oli London. And I gagged. So it is so nice to see you here in America. How many times have you been to Israel?
So it's actually my fourth time. I literally was just there last week for Tel Aviv Fashion Week, and I just fell in love with Israel. We obviously went earlier this year, and it was such a special. We were going around Jerusalem on the scooters, driving around the old city, and we had the helmets on and exploring all the little side streets. And there's just something special about Israel. It's just the people are incredible. They're resilient. They're kind. They're welcoming. The food is amazing, and so much history and culture. And it was just special. So yeah, it's 4 times now, and I'm planning to go back again soon.
Nice. It's so funny because people ask me about Israel all the time. They're like, are you going there getting a check? I'm like, no, but
that $7,000 check, right? Yeah, they're always going on about that.
Literally, it's like I should be paying them $7,000 a post for every time I go there because I love that country so much. It would be worth it. The food, the culture, the vibes, the people, like everything you could. I always say this, any interest you have, you will find the best of it in Israel. Could you agree?
You know, whether you like food, the food there, oh my God, the portions. I mean, if you're on a diet, guys, you got to be careful in Israel because the portions, the starters are like 10 different dishes. And, you know, you have the main course comes and I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't eat another dish. And then the dessert comes. But, you know, it's so nice to try all the different stuff and everything is grown fresh.
Yes.
Like they grow all the fruits, the vegetables, the hummus is made fresh in Israel. Like everything is fresh. So you can really taste the difference. And, you know, we also did a farm to table visit. So we went to a farm in the south and, you know, they literally picked the vegetables out the ground and we ate them fresh. And oh my God, that was the best food I've ever had.
Yes.
You know, so there's so much to offer in Israel, whether you're Christian and you want to go there for a pilgrimage and visit the holy sites, or, you know, whether you like history and culture, visiting the Western Wall in Jerusalem is just a special energy. I mean, we went and that was a very, very special energy there.
Yo, yes. That's one of the things. If you're into wellness, you can go there, have the most delicious, truly organic, not organic with a sprinkle of hormones, like truly organic food. You can go there for amazing, you know, history, religion. Even if it's not your faith, it's still so amazing to go there and see the thousands of years of history that they've been able to preserve there. And if you're not religious, you want to go there just to turn up, the nightclubs are popping too. So it's like whether you're there to pray or to twerk, you will find the vibes in the Holy Land.
That is true. And it's got the best of everything. Geographically, it's quite a small country. So if you want to go from the south to the north, you can do it in a few hours. And, it's really easy to get around. And you've got in the south, Eilat, which is on the Red Sea. So you have, tropical fish. You can go swimming and scuba diving. In the north, you have Galilee, which is great for wine and cheese. And, we went there as well. And just so much to offer. And if you're a history fan, I mean, you can literally go see a 2,000-year-old Roman aqueduct. And then if you want to go party, like you said, Tel Aviv literally has so many nightclubs. It's kind of like Miami, right? Do you get the same vibe?
Way better, though.
Better?
Tel Aviv, I'm not even kidding. Tel Aviv is my favorite nightlife city in the world because the vibes are popping and people actually dance there. When you go out there, like they're actually moving. In Miami, it's everybody in the club sitting their own sections and nobody's leaving their table. It's just like going bottle for bottle and it's everybody trying to flex. In Tel Aviv, people aren't trying to flex. They're trying to have a good time and celebrate life. That's what I like about there. When I do go out into the club. Going to the Red Sea, though, that's one of the things I have not done there. I've been there 5 times and I have not made it there yet.
Everybody keeps saying, you can actually get a flight from Tel Aviv to Eilat, or you can drive. It's a couple of hours. But yeah, that's one place not being. Also the Dead Sea, which, is
you
great.
Haven't been?
I still haven't been to. Everybody says, why haven't you been? It's like every time I'm there, it's always like a busy schedule and stuff and, visiting different places and trying to raise awareness of hostages and, so haven't had the chance. But that's definitely on the next trip. We'll go together. We'll do a spa day.
We seriously should.
Let's do it.
I'm telling you, I've only made it to the Dead Sea once because every time since then has been a similar situation. Too much going on, so much work to do. Where sometimes I'm there just for advocacy, so it's like I'm going and doing the more serious stuff. And this most recent time I went, I had a day dedicated. I'm like, okay, I'm taking a break for the Dead Sea. Of course, it's record-breaking heat wave. It's like 120 degrees, and I'm like, if my foot touches that sand, I'm going to catch on fire. So I want to ask, so you've been there now 4 times. What shocked you the most the first time you went?
Well, actually, the first time I went was very, very tough and raw. It was literally 7 weeks since the October 7th happened. Wow. So I was on the very first influencer trip there. And it was so harrowing. I mean, when October 7th happened, obviously I do my Twitter on X and I was tweeting about what was happening. I was seeing all the videos, no filter, when they were just posted on Telegram, seeing the horrific things happening to people in Israel at the Nova Festival in their homes, families being held hostage and killed, the Thai migrant workers, Nepalese students being killed on camera. Never seen anything like it, and so it was very raw to actually go there. And I went to Kfar Aza, actually went inside the homes. They were burned to the ground. I mean, everything was charred. It was just ash on the floor. We've been places together, and it was indescribable. And one specific family home I went to in Kfar Aza was where an entire family were found riddled with bullets on their bed, hugging each other in their safe room, and you could still smell the burnt flesh. That was after 7 weeks. You could still smell it. So that was very, very raw and heartbreaking to go from house to house to imagine what had happened. And then you, of course, can see the videos of what happened. And, I'd see houses that I recognized from these videos that were posted on October 7th and just think the sheer terror that happened in there. And, I met with survivors. I met with families that had lost loved ones. I met with a group of young students from Kfar Aza. And you just can't imagine what they went through and the trauma they're dealing with, 2 years on. So that was my first trip. Also went to the north to the Lebanese border to assess the situation with Hezbollah. Now, obviously, Hezbollah's strength has been reduced thanks to targeted Israeli strikes and obviously the pager.
Iconic.
I mean, that was just next level. That puts James Bond and Mission Impossible to shame. That was next level. But
that was peak internet that day too.
Yeah, it literally was. So yeah, I went to assess that. So the first time I went was tough, but then I've been back ever since and trying to help the hostage families, trying to help share the stories of people that lost loved ones at the Nova Festival in the southern communities, and keep their stories alive.
That's amazing. I can only imagine the intensity being there 7 weeks after, because I went 90 days after, and I will never, as long as I live, forget the distinct smell when I went to Kfar Aza, and you could feel the heaviness. And that's the thing about Israel too. It's like everywhere you go, you feel different. Like you feel the spiritual presence. Even my friends that have been there that are completely secular started questioning, like, okay, they didn't even know if they wanted to maintain secularism. And they were saying even being secular, they know that there's something special about that land. But to be there during that heaviness, it was beyond intense. I do wish you could have been there before the war. I feel like what I've always described is when I had the privilege of going to Israel in June of 2023. And it's so crazy that like I felt so connected to the land there. And before even like anything crazy popped off, I didn't have that much knowledge before going to Israel the first time. And I just knew it was something special. But what I always say is that the first time I went, I saw the joy of Israel. The second time I went after October 7th, that's when I saw the heart of Israel. That's when I saw people really, fighting to maintain that spirit, that family bonding. Like no matter who you were, they were bringing you in, embracing you, just so happy that you were there. But being there before the war, it was also that same sentiment, but without the heaviness. You get what I'm saying? Like it was just like the air was lighter. Like I felt like I was in paradise. And I remember it was to the point I forgot that I was even in an area that was in constant conflict until the second to last day I was there. It was actually up by that same Lebanon border. And I was going there, learning some of the history. And I heard the sounds of rockets going back to Lebanon because Lebanon had tried to attack Israel earlier in the week or earlier that day. And just feeling the ground shake and hearing the noise, I remember I collapsed to the ground and I saw this mother comforting her child, and her child's like hysterically crying, and the mother is just like tired. She's just like, she's very empathetic, but at the same time, she's just like, this is our reality. This is what we go through. And when she and I made eye contact, it was like, she looked at me to give me comfort, and this is her reality. And I was like, wow. And I remember just like standing up and my body was just covered in chills. And that's when I realized like my connection to this land is deep. I need to fight for these people. I can't believe this is what they're going through. So all that to say, it's intense. I wish everybody could be there. And with your Christian faith, how much did going there impact your spiritual beliefs?
Well, so I only became a Christian over 3 years ago, and that was a kind of epiphany moment for me because I needed some direction in my life. I needed something a higher power to look up to kind of give me strength and help me choose a different path in life. And some people know me from TikTok and YouTube. I used to be a little bit crazy, let's say.
And we'll get into that later.
We'll get into that later. But, I used to, kind of the young generation, we kind of get addicted to social media. We post crazy things and stuff. And, I wanted to escape that. I wanted to have a purpose in life. So I made a connection with God. And, that's been 3 years now. And going to Israel as a new Christian was very special. I mean, going to all the holy sites, King David's tomb, going to where Jesus had the Last Supper, recently visited Magdalena, where Mary Magdalene was born, and you can actually see the ruins of the house where she was born in, and visiting so many special places. There's a very special energy there. So for those that haven't been there, I can't explain it in words. You have to be there to feel it. You felt it at the Western Wall. There's a very special energy. I mean, this is a place that has thousands of years of history. It's mentioned so many times in the Bible. This is where Jesus was from and his disciples. And, somebody that studies the Bible, reads the Bible, you go to all these places. I went to recently some mountains that were mentioned in the Bible where actually horrifically the Romans were throwing Jewish people off the mountains 2,000 years ago, and the Carmel Mountains, and visiting all these places that are mentioned in the Bible. It's just so surreal. So for me, going there, it's helped me strengthen my connection to God and strengthen my connection to faith. And recently on my last trip, I did something very, very special, which I actually haven't shared yet.
Okay.
But basically, I went to Yardenit, so in the Sea of Galilee, and got baptized in the River Jordan, where Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. And it was a very special experience. That was on the 3rd anniversary since I became Christian. And I knew, I could have gone to a church, and I had lots of different pastors and priests saying, do you want to get baptized here? We'll do it. And I was like, has to be where Jesus got baptized. For me, I was set in it, and it just wasn't the right time. Obviously, the war was ongoing, and, I didn't want to do it then. It didn't feel right. So now, I've just got baptized there, and, feel a stronger connection to God. And some people believe in miracles or signs. And when I actually got baptized, it was weird. The pastor kind of opened his hands, and it looked like a dragonfly came out of his hands. And a dragonfly is normally a sign of renewal. And there wasn't any other dragonflies in the area I didn't see. And suddenly I literally got baptized, came out the water, and a dragonfly almost comes out of his hands. And I just saw that as a sign that, God has renewed me, given me a new purpose. So for me, as a Christian, and for any Christian that wants to go to Israel, it is such a special way to connect with God and to visit all these biblical places.
Wow. God bless you, and congratulations.
Thank you.
I feel like we got a l'chaim to that one more time.
But just don't drink your smoothie, right? You don't want to spit it out.
I'll take a little sip. If anything, it's like toothpaste. Keeps my breath refreshing. That is so amazing, and I'm so glad you got to do that. And, that brings me to one of my other questions. Would a lot of, there's a rising Christian nationalist movement that's going on. And the thing is, it's like, I kind of hate even using that term for them because I love Christianity. I love nationalism. But like the Christian nationalist movement has gotten, really overtaken and hijacked by some sketchy characters lately. And so many of them hate Christian Zionists, which one, for so many biblical reasons, makes absolutely no sense to me. But the other part of it is I ask Christians that are more skeptical of Israel, it's like, okay, if you have issues with their government or some of their policies, that's one thing. But to sit here and act like you hate the Jewish people, or even better yet, they will say that the Jews hate Christians. I'm like, if Jewish people hated Christians so much, why are the Jews of Israel going so far out of their way to preserve the Christian holy sites that really have not much to do with them based on their own faith? And I want to ask you, in your honest opinion, if every Jew left Israel right now, do you think that Christians would step up and protect the holy sites?
No, I mean, Israel is incredible at preserving things. I mean, I was just there and, I did a historical tour and, they preserved the Roman mosaics, the Byzantine mosaics, the aqueducts, everything is so well preserved. And they also preserve old coins. They have a special kind of ministry dedicated to protecting old coins and artifacts. And, whenever they find like the city of David, whenever they find new artifacts, they will not allow building on there. So they're very, very good at preserving archaeology. And, we saw obviously what happened in Syria years ago with ISIS, blowing up Palmyra, which was an ancient ruins. And, Israel and the Jewish people, they're fantastic at preserving this history, this culture. And there are also so many Christians that live in the Holy Land. There's so many Muslims, 2 million Arab Muslims and Bedouins live inside Israel. They're Israeli citizens. And, people live together in harmony. Jewish, the Druze community, all faiths live together in harmony inside Israel. And I think that's also a thing some of these, so-called Christian nationalists that are hating on Israel and saying, it's not Christian friendly. I mean, literally everybody lives there in harmony. You've got a huge growing Christian population. You've got a large Muslim population, an Arab population, a Druze population, and everybody lives together. They're all Israeli citizens. They all contribute to society, and it's a very special thing. And I think a lot of these people online, like Tucker Carlson, they're opportunists, because they're seeing their views go through the roof because they're saying something bad against Israel. Because, at the moment, it's a trend to hate on Israel online. It's a sad trend, just like BLM became a trend, with all the cities being burnt down. It was trendy to post a black square, these influencers have absolutely no idea what it means. They have no clue. They've never said anything about, supporting the black community or trying to uplift people's voices. It's, let's jump on the trend. So I think a lot of these so-called Christian nationalist voices online are literally opportunists capitalizing on the anti-Israel hate. They're jumping on a trend. And I think, anyone that has a platform, I think you have a duty to speak the truth and, to stick up for people. And I think, what's been happening in the last 2 years is, of course, there has been a war, but what's been happening around the world is the sharp rise in anti-Semitism. And, when you have just the other day, when hours after Zoran Mamdani was elected in New York, you had swastikas drawn on a Jewish building in Brooklyn. And, you have in Toronto, Jewish businesses being vandalized, in London, windows being smashed in Jewish areas, hostage postages being ripped down. And, it's become mainstreamed because of these people that are online. And, everybody can have a different political belief and, everybody has their different viewpoints on Israel, the Israeli government. But to target a specific group of people like Jewish people and spread this hate and make it popular and trendy to hate on them, and you have Jewish students having to hide that they're Jewish, having to hide the Star of David, having to take their kippah off to go to school. You have synagogues that have to have armed guards. I mean, that is just so wrong. Can't people go and worship? We had in the UK, in Manchester, on Yom Kippur, a terrorist went in and killed 2 Jewish worshippers in a synagogue, and that is been normalized by people online that are spreading this hate and rhetoric, and it's wrong because, you know, if you look at what happened in the 1930s in Germany with Kristallnacht, with the targeting of Jewish businesses, the Juden boycott, you know, they're writing Star of Davids on shops, they're telling people to boycott. That's exactly what's happening now. The BDS movement, the Palestine activists, they are turning this Palestine activism into a specific targeting of Jews. So many of these protesters, it's got nothing to do with Palestine. If you ask them, oh, what river are you chanting about? Good luck getting an answer. They don't have a clue. They're jumping on a trend, but it's become mainstream now to hate on Jewish people, and it's so wrong. So I feel, you know, Christians should be speaking up for Jewish people, and, you know, Jewish people have sadly been persecuted for thousands of years. You know, since the time of Moses having to flee Egypt, Jewish people have been persecuted. And, you know, I think we all have a duty to actually stand up for them.
You know, I really would dare to even say that a lot of Christians should be sending thank you notes to the Jewish people of Israel, because, again, like, we would lose so much of our own history if it wasn't for the fact that Jewish people are constantly stepping up for us. And to see these people who claim to be Christians, it's like, first of all, I know your Bible is mad dusty. It's like, I know just because you own a Bible in your house, how dare that make you so delusional as to think that you get to speak on behalf of Christians in our country. So it's pretty wild to see that all unfold in real time. I want to get into like a bit of your journey to how you've become this prolific infamous figure. First question, are you transracial?
No. No, so I used to do, you know, my YouTube and TikTok. I used to love Korea, and I still love K-pop. You know, I used to make K-pop music videos, and, you know, I was having a lot of fun on TikTok, and, you know, I said I wanted a specific look, and, you know, I did have some surgeries, did have a lot of surgeries to have a specific look, and, you know, I wanted to have the K-pop idol look. And that kind of got translated as, oh my God, he wants to change his race and stuff. And really, I just wanted to look like a K-pop star. Mm-hmm. So I did do a lot of surgeries in about 5 or 6 different countries, and I did all that. And it was a crazy era, I have to say. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I just thought, if somebody can say they're trans, you know, change your gender, I'm just going to say that, just see what people say. And, you know, people went crazy. And then I had Rachel Dolezal, like, defending me on TMZ. Like, you know, it was a kind of crazy time, but it was interesting because it kind of proved that, so all of these people that were attacking me, mostly, you know, LGBT activists, you know, saying, how dare you misappropriate, you know, Korean culture and stuff. And I was thinking, okay, so it's all right for you to wear a woman's dress and go in a women's locker room, and you think that's okay, and then I'm not allowed to have, you know, my so-called identity. So it was interesting to see the response from people, and also to show the hypocrisy of the kind of trans movement, when they're like, you know, you can be LGBTQIS, two-spirit, whatever, but suddenly you know, say that, oh, I'm transracial, whatever, and they just go mad. So, you know, it was just, I wanted a certain look. I wanted the Korean K-pop idol look, and, you know, I kind of went too far. I've acknowledged it was crazy, and I've kind of found myself now. But it was, just interesting to see people's responses when they're all right with a man going in a women's locker room, or a man playing in women's sports because he says he's a woman, but they weren't all right with me, you know, saying I'm Korean.
You know, I support the transracial movement.
Ooh.
Because
controversial take there, guys.
Well, hear me out. Mm-hmm. I learned after doing my 23andMe that I am 2% Chinese, and that gave me so much clarity about who I truly am, because Chinese people are at the top of everything good and at the bottom of everything bad, and I am fully in support of Asian supremacy now. So
but I do love Asia as well, so let's high five to that.
Yeah, we love Asian culture.
Asian supremacy.
Just 2 Asians kicking it, 2 Asian Zionists.
Maybe I should do a DNA test as well and see what we got in there. Yeah,
because maybe you have, you know, a little dose of Korean.
It's got to be. It's got to be somewhere. Maybe a little bit of Israeli as well. It's got to be, because me and you, we just have that connection. I mean, we've been there multiple times, but there's just a connection there. So I think we're maybe honorary Jewish. You know,
we're at least halfway there.
We're at least exactly.
Yeah. So it's like that to me when I learned that whole part of your journey, because I didn't know that. I knew you mostly from like the Zionism world, and then as I started learning more of your story, and I was just like, oh, transracial too. That's interesting. Before you started getting the surgeries, did you consult like your close friends and family members, or did you just say, I'm just gonna do it?
I just did it. I mean, it was like I used to live in South Korea, so I literally just did it. I'd always wanted to change myself. I always struggled with like identity issues and the way I looked, and confidence issues, and had a lot of bullying when I was a teen. So always wanted to change it, but you know, I never told anyone. I would just do the surgeries. Everybody would get upset. They'd be like, you know, telling me to stop, and then I'd do more and more and more, and like flying to different countries and doing it. And then it just got to a point where it was, I was out of control. You know, I'll admit it. Like, I think it's very important to admit past mistakes, and it's absolutely out of control. You know, if the doctor said no, I'll go to the next doctor, do another surgery, and I generally was addicted. And you know, I'll also admit that with the social media, you know, I was like a TikToker, YouTuber, and I also became addicted to that kind of attention. And, you know, now I really, you know, I don't like the attention. Like my ex, I'll never post about me and stuff. Like I like to be trying to do advocacy work. But before, I think TikTok kind of pulls you in. It's very narcissistic. Influence is always about posting selfies, posting about look at me. And, you know, everybody's competing with each other for views and stuff. And I kind of fell into that addiction. And, you know, it was harmful because I was then going to do surgeries. You know, I was changing my identity. And it's also harmful because then I've got young people watching me thinking, okay, is this okay? Shall I do this? You know, so I had to do a lot of reflection on that. And, you know, that's why now I'm so devoted to advocacy and trying to right those wrongs of the past where I feel like maybe I was a bad influence on people that were following me.
I mean, I respect that a lot. You know, everybody deserves a redemption arc for the most part. Maybe not everybody, but for the most part, at the end of the day, it's like mindset wise, it may have harmed some people, but you weren't out there trying to harm people. You were never a bad person. You were just someone that was lost and on their path, you know? So I definitely respect that. I do want to ask too, so you had an era where it seemed you went from non-binary to quickly were transitioning. And then just months later, you had detransitioned and you had completely stepped away from the gender ideology world. What was that journey like, and what made you change your perspective on the gender ideology? Yeah,
so I was obviously going through the identity crisis during the surgeries, trying to have the kind of Korean look, and then I wasn't satisfied, and then I was so addicted to surgeries, I just thought, what am I going to do next? And then I thought, okay, maybe I've misplaced my identity crisis. Maybe I'm trans, you know, maybe, because I always had people saying, oh, you're feminine, you're like a girl and stuff. So since I was like a teen, I had people saying that to me. So I thought maybe I'd be happier as trans. So I went, I had 11 surgeries in one day, facial feminization in Turkey, and it left me with a lot of scars.
11 in one day?
11 in one day. Eyes, so I did the eyes, jawline shaving, chin, neck lift, facelift, eyebrow bone shaving, that's actually a thing. Like eye lift, I had my cheek, the fat removed here, buccal fat removal, like literally the whole face to make it more feminine. And, you know, I felt really happy for a few months. I felt amazing. And then suddenly I was getting so much positivity. All the hate and trolls turned to like love. And, oh, we celebrate you because you're trans, you know. And I thought it was, you know, for somebody that wanted that validation, which many young people do that change their genders, it felt good, you know. And then I felt, you know, finally people actually like me, or they think I look nice. And, you know, so that kind of affirmed that identity. And then I just got to a point where I was like, okay, what's the next surgery? You know, do I go down the next extreme, which is doing the body surgery? And I was seriously considering it, and I did a few consultations. And then I got to a point where I was like, well, when am I going to stop? You know, it's been like 10 years of doing different surgeries, trying to change my identity. Am I going to stop, or am I going to end up dying on the operating table? And, you know, I had to look at that and balance it. And I thought, what's the point? Because every time I do surgery, I'm happy for 2 months, and then the happiness fades and I want the next thing. So it's like, you never feel good enough. You never feel satisfied enough. So it's always chasing the next thing. So I went from the, you know, the non-binary to trans, thinking that was going to make me happy, and it just didn't. So yeah, I got to the point where I was like, okay, do I stop this or do I continue? And if I want to stop it, how do I stop it? Because I couldn't do it on my own. So, you know, I went to some therapy sessions, and then I went to a local church, and that gave me some clarity and just made me have kind of the courage to think, you know what, let me step back from this. Let me just try to be myself. Let me, you know, try to find my own identity. Why am I chasing other identities when I can just be me? That was kind of the realization moment.
Wow. I'm like actually blown away.
Yeah.
Because we hear so much and we talk a lot about the whole journey of wokeism, and how when you are in this woke mindset, it's like you're always chasing happiness, you're always chasing acceptance, and you're always chasing fulfillment. And it's like you never get it. And it's like when you go the most drastic route and then you start changing your body, like chopping things off, castrating yourself, going through all that, these people more often than not do not end up happy. So it's such a miracle and a blessing that you were able to figure that out before it went to the point where you were just completely a shell of yourself. I hate to say it like that, but that's how a lot of these people end up. Before you started, you know, transitioning, did anyone try to like talk to you about it? Like, this might be something you regret? Like, were you doing hormones? Like, What did that look like?
So most people were actually encouraging it, like, oh, you know, go for it. If this is the way you feel, like you should embrace your identity. And, you know, maybe you've misplaced your identity struggles and because you're meant to be trans, you're meant to be like a woman. And so I was just a very confused person. And, you know, I wanted that validation. And, you know, for the first time when I became trans, the trolls weren't trolling me and stuff. And it felt nice to people saying, oh, you look beautiful, you look amazing. And, you know, it just felt good. So I think the vast majority of people, I mean, I've researched it for my book, the vast majority of young people are doing it because they want to feel validated. They want to feel special. And, you know, when you see, let's say they're posting their journey on TikTok, whether they're doing hormones or whatever, that gets amplified. They get a lot of views. They get a lot of positive comments. And for somebody that didn't have that before, maybe somebody that's like a bit of a loner at school, they don't have friends, and suddenly you get people validating you, you know, or the teacher using your new pronouns, you know, for somebody that's never had that, it feels good.
And then you
feel seen, and then you want to do more and more. Yeah. The more extreme you do, the more attention you get. I mean, a great case is Dylan Mulvaney, you know, started out being like a dramatic theatre kid on TikTok and social media, and has started his Day in the Girl, what was it, Girlhood series, Day in the Life of a Girl, Day One of a Girl, you know, and then you saw each video, he would say something more shocking, more crazy, it'd get more views, be amplified. So I think for people like Dylan Mulvaney and these other trans people, I think it's a validation thing. And they tend to do more extremes, like you see young people cutting off body parts because, you know, their friends praised them and said, well done, you're meant to be trans, this is the real you, this is who you're meant to be. And then you see, you know, like these LGBT advocacy groups that are, you know, pushing this, gender transitions on kids, you know, let them be who they want to be, you know, that kind of thing. And then little school books that are pushing this as well, subtly, in cartoons. You know, when you have all of that being pushed on a kid's mind, it leaves an impression, and they think, okay, maybe I am meant to be different, you know, because maybe it's a boy and they're a little bit feminine, maybe it's a girl that's a tomboy, you know, which happens to a lot of people. They will now be encouraged that you're trans. Let's give you a new name. Let's give you some preferred pronouns. Let's not tell your parents because we want to protect you, you know. And I think young people, you know, I felt it as well. Young people feel they want to fit in. And right now the trend is being trans or non-binary, because if you have a they them kid, you're going to get more attention. And then if we look at it psychologically, there's different cases. Obviously, sometimes you have the case where the young person feels that way. Maybe there's an influence at school, maybe something they've seen online. You have also Munchausen by proxy. Some of the parents actually push it on the kids. So, you know, not to point out races, but it tends to be white middle class families from my research that, you know, the white liberal families will be pushing it on the kids because they want their kid to be special. They want their kid to be different. And, you know, seeing a lot of cases like that, and also see cases where the mother will transition the kid to spite the dad during a divorce so they can get custody. And there have been cases of that where the mother wins custody because she's affirming the child's gender identity. The dad's trying to stop it. And so there are cases of that as well. So it's a very harmful trend. I do see now there is a change. I think most people are aware. Parents are outspoken. You know, there are girls now refusing to play against biological males. So I do think we're seeing a lot of change. But I think like Hollywood and social media and celebrities, you know, constantly saying, you know, we need to affirm their identity, and they're just kids. You know, it's harmful. Yeah. So, you know, I wasn't a kid, I was an adult, but I fell into that trap, and I think a lot of young people do. And now that's why I feel it's important to be outspoken against it, you know, because no kid should have to go through that.
Wow. You know, as you're saying all this, it makes me realize that validation is arguably the most dangerous weapon being used against kids today. Making kids feel like every single thing that you might believe, no matter how delusional it is, that you're correct. Not only are you making these kids that much more delusional and think that their delusion is correct, but you're making them into little narcissists. You're making them thinking that you're making these kids, by validating their delusions, think that the world operates around them and that they are so special because they decided to put themselves as an oppressed class. And that's one thing I've always pointed out that never really made sense to me. If you are talking so much about oppression and so much about how difficult life is to be a part of this community, why are you encouraging kids to shove themselves into that community so early? Why are you telling them to do that prematurely before they've even grown and become who they are? Like, if all the decisions I wanted to make at 15 would reflect my life now, without, you know, parental supervision and like common sense being spoken into me, can imagine what I would be like, or what most people would be like. And for you to fall into it as an adult, it shows just how susceptible human beings are to that sense of validation and that sense of acceptance and community. And that ties into as well, like when I went to the UCLA encampments, what I noticed, a lot of these kids weren't the hateful, burly, aggressive types. A lot of these kids were visibly probably 18 and 19 years old, underclassmen. They were misfits. They were definitely looking for just that sense of community, that sense of embracing each other. And by being a part of this Free Palestine movement, while also having all their other intersectionalities, that's where they felt safe. It had nothing to do with Israel. They didn't even know anything about Israel. The kids there that I talked to didn't even know what October 7th was, yet they spent weeks inside of this encampment. So what it was is they were looking for community, acceptance, and validation, and that's very dangerous. I do want to ask you, now that you're in this new era, do you feel accepted and validated inside of the Christian church with your past and with them knowing your past?
You know, now I've come to realize it's all about self-acceptance. So if you can accept yourself and validate yourself, that's all that matters. So now it's like I don't go chasing other people's opinions, or, I don't want that validation. I feel validating myself, through my faith, through my advocacy work, and I think that's all that matters. So, I do feel very accepted by the Christian community. Since I became Christian, it's been incredible support. People sending me prayers, all the prayer warrior groups and stuff. So it's great to feel that sense of community, and they've been so kind to me. And when I've been to kind of Christian holy sites in Israel, it's always, you feel a special connection, and they're very passionate about sharing it with you, especially as a new Christian, sharing this history with you, sharing their faith with you. But yeah, for me now, I've learned that if you can validate yourself, that's all that matters. And I think that's what young people need to do, instead of, going on social media, which is inherently narcissistic. It's all about, me, look at my new selfie. We have it with celebrities, not to throw shade, but you have like Kim Kardashian and stuff. I mean, I respect her as a businesswoman. I'm not throwing shade, but, it's all about the selfie culture, look at me showing off my body and that kind of thing. And I think that's not a healthy culture for young people to grow up, especially when young people have identity issues or self-confidence issues. So I think we need to be encouraging young people to feel validated on their own. And like you said, with those pro-Palestine encampments, these kids, they absolutely have no clue whatsoever. They join the Black Lives Matter protest. They don't have a clue what they're protesting. They just there. They turn up with the keffiyeh, the nose ring, and the blue hair, and they think they're good to go. They want to be an oppressed minority, and that's also a thing as well. These young people, I'm trans, non-binary, two-spirit. They want to be an oppressed minority. It's a bizarre psychological thing, but they want to feel special because we're taught with different movements over the years that minorities. We need to uplift minority voices, blah, 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 blah. We need to hire more minorities in Hollywood, that kind of thing. So they're thinking, let me be a minority as well. And so they become trans, they become non-binary. The woman will shave her hair, get a nose ring, because they want to stand out. And it's sad because they have no idea what they're fighting for. They have no idea what they're protesting against. They're like zombies. I mean, you've been to the encampments. They're literally like possessed zombies, and you can't have a reasonable conversation with them because it's like a sheep mentality. And then we also saw it with COVID, with like the mask people, the social distancing people, they would just go ballistic if somebody goes too close to them or whatever, or if you're not wearing a mask. And it's that herd mentality. They don't have rationality. Like, they can't have a conversation with you like normal people can. They just like start screaming, and that's what the Palestine activists do. Because they don't have an argument.
Yeah.
The trans activists, stop doing this to kids, and then they'll scream at you. They do not have a strong argument for their cause. A reasonable person would have a debate, and, you could disagree with me, I could disagree with you, but we could still talk about it and discuss it. But these young people are sadly being brainwashed into this narcissistic society where they want to be oppressed, they want to be a minority, and they want to attach themselves to social causes to feel like they're doing something. Mm-hmm. But it's like Greta Thunberg's a great example. She was I call her a grifter, Greta Grifter. She was a climate change activist, and suddenly she's abandoned that now. All the pollution the boats caused with the flotilla going from Barcelona to Gaza. They threw their phones overboard. It's like hardly eco-friendly, right?
Right.
And she's just, I'm sure she's a puppet, but she's just attached herself to that because Palestine's the latest trend, and she was saying, the Israelis, have detained her, they're abusing her and stuff. And, they treat them so nicely. Imagine if the Israel didn't stop them and they actually went to Gaza, that would not end well. Right. Look what they did at the Nova Festival. Look what happened, what Hamas did to all citizens that were in Israel that day. There was French people, a lot of Americans were killed, British, Nepalese students, Thai migrant workers, they don't care. And, these people, they don't see that Israel's the good guy. Israel is the one, fighting the fight for Western civilization. So all these activists, they're attaching themselves to a cause that would not support them. You know, if you're a queers for Palestine, trans for Palestine, you go to Palestine, you know, it's not going to end well. And they just don't see it. They're blinded by the hate. They're blinded by this kind of trend that they see online, and it's crazy.
Oh, you just bringing up Greta Thunberg stresses me out.
Sorry.
They
Let's change the conversation to Nicki Minaj.
Literally,
Let's get the vibe
that'd be
back up.
real joy.
Exactly.
Because Greta Thunberg, it's like they're really dragging this disabled little girl all around the country. It was one thing for them to have her talking about the climate. It's like, okay, go do your thing. Go put your pigtails on and milk those until people remember that you're a grown woman now. But now they have her in this botched bob looking crazy.
With the frog hat.
With the frog hat. She's almost 40 now, in my mind. She's been around so long. Throwing her phone in the ocean. It's like, girl, you forgot about your whole brand. You forgot about your whole grifting come up. Now you're just polluting openly, all because you want to be on this free Palestine wave. It's like, Greta Thunberg, please take several seats and like politely shut the hell up. Like, that's my only advice to her, is to shut the hell up. Take the money that she has grifted and go live a comfortable life. Go pet the frogs.
Go
save
get
the
your
frogs.
solar panels on your roof and go live in a wooden cabin in the woods. Exactly.
Literally.
Go enjoy your money, Greta.
I physically can't with her. And you know, it's so funny to me how the Free Palestine crowd is now so silent that there actually is a ceasefire. It's like, ceasefire now,
Where
ceasefire
are the celebrities?
now.
Where's Susan Sarandon, Mark Ruffalo? Where's all these celebrities that were so outspoken? Cynthia Nixon, Rosie O'Donnell.
Dua Peep.
Yeah.
Where are they at? where are these
Is that how you say her name? Dua Lipa? Dua Peep?
Dua Peep.
I thought she was Dua Lipa or Dua Peep?
Dua Peep is close enough.
Okay,
that's
there we
as close
go.
as I'm
there
getting.
we go. But yeah, where are they now? It's like suddenly there's a ceasefire, the hostages are being released, and absolutely silent. So it just shows you that their movement is nothing to actually do with what's going on. They have no knowledge of the situation. They're just literally jumping on it because it's a trend.
Yeah. And it's like you said earlier, it's always looking for the next thing to feel validated.
What about Sudan? What about Nigeria? Why aren't these celebrities and Greta Thunberg, why are they not protesting against what just happened in Sudan at the Saudi maternity hospital in the Darfur region, where, you know, over 460 patients and doctors in a maternity hospital were slaughtered, and in Nigeria where Christians are being mass slaughtered, their churches are being burned down. Yet suddenly that's the real genocide, and there's nobody talking about that. You know, where are the celebrities? They're silent. So it just shows you their hypocrisy. They don't actually care about what's going on in the Middle East or the region. They simply care about something because it's trending, and, you know, everybody else is posting about it. Dua Lipa, whatever she's called, you know, they're all posting about it, so let's jump on the bandwagon. They don't actually care about people in Myanmar. Rohingya, which are Muslim people, are being killed. They're being, you know, there's bombed all the time. There's airstrikes, you know, and they're a Muslim minority. Where's all of the Palestine activists there? Or the Uyghur people in Xinjiang province in China?
Yeah.
Where's the outrage there? There's nothing. So it just shows you the Palestine movement has nothing to do with Palestine. If they cared about people, they'd care about all people. Sudan, Nigeria, they don't. It's simply because it's a trend and they've been brainwashed. And, you know, what's going to be the next trend? What do you think? Can we predict
the next
that?
trend? I mean, it's so hard to even look past the free. I'm still accepting that they're finally moving on from the ceasefire now stuff.
Right.
And it's so funny because, like, you hit the nail on the head. There's all these celebrities who make their entire brand about their activism, and they're saying nothing about what's happening to Christians in Nigeria. The one person who spoke out was Nicki Minaj.
Queen Nicki.
And it's like, Nicki has always been outspoken, but like being an activist, like when I describe all the incredible things Nicki Minaj is, she's always been someone outspoken, but never quite an activist. But now she's the one stepping up, being like,
She's pretty much the only one as well speaking out. Obviously, President Trump has, thank God, has spoken up and stepped up. But in terms of the celebrity world, she's pretty much the only one.
And then people tried to condemn her because they're mad at her, saying like, how dare you speak on this and support Trump and thank Trump that he's actually doing something for these Christian Nigerians. And she called out, she's like, if your first instinct when you hear that Christians are being slaughtered is to be mad at me because of Trump, then you are sick in the head. And it's the same thing with the ceasefire. I think part of why they're refusing to say anything about the ceasefire is because they know that President Trump's influence is a huge factor in why.
Right.
And it's like, that's something that shouldn't even be a political discussion. You have people whose lives are now being saved. Why are we not all collectively happy?
Because Trump was the one that stopped the war and got the hostages out, and they don't want to acknowledge that Trump did it.
Yeah.
You know, because if it was Kamala in office, it would still be ongoing. The hostages would still be there. You know, Trump really pushed hard with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, and they really pushed hard to get the hostages out. And, you know, there's silence. Hollywood is silent now, you know, and it's hypocrisy. You know, they've been protesting for 2 years, non-stop. And then suddenly absolute silence when there is an actual ceasefire, when the war is stopped, when, So it's hypocrisy. But yeah, good on Nicki Minaj for speaking up for Christians, because, what's going on there is so horrific. It's been going on for years and nobody's shining a light on it. And same in Sudan, nobody's shining a light on it. So, it just exposes the hypocrisy of the Free Palestine movement, because they're not speaking up for anyone else. The people in Yemen, there's a lot of starvation and famine in Yemen. Don't seem to care about that. The media doesn't seem to care about that. It's only about Palestine, and what does that show you? It's, because the Jewish people live in Israel. They don't like the fact that Jewish people have their own state. And that's ultimately what it's about, because what the Free Palestine movement is exposed is it's all about anti-Semitism. It's morphed into a Free Palestine. Now it's about hating on Jews and targeting Jewish businesses, and Jewish people control the world. That kind of narrative. That's what they're focusing on now, and it's pure anti-Semitism, and they've morphed that kind of social justice movement into an anti-Semitic movement. And sadly, those feelings, the persecution of Jewish people has been there for thousands of years, but now it's become mainstreamed, and that's the real problem.
You really asked a mind-blowing question a second ago too, of like, what's the next thing? So like, I started speaking out about politics in like 2021, and it's like, since then I've seen everything from BLM to the vaccine mandates to gender, everything, the non-binary people, transgenderism, everything you can think of. Then it's now people trying to fight against Islamophobia. And when I think about the concept of there being a next thing, that's terrifying. But I really don't think it's time to look for the next thing, or like to question what the next thing is, because I still think we have yet to see how insane this whole Islamic rise, and particularly the merging between the radical left and the radical Islam crowd. I think we have not even seen that peak yet. With Mulvaney taking over New York City, I think that's going to give it new life in a way we've never seen before. I think socialism is going to become that much more of a popular thing people are going to try to push. But, my final question for you is, how much of a threat do you think radical Islam is to the West today?
Well, that's a good point about the radical left aligning themselves with the radical Islamists, because they're both polar opposites, yet because they're so hateful of the West, they've aligned themselves. Because, if these trans activists step foot in some of these places in the Middle East like Gaza, they would not last long. And that's generally what these people think of them. But they're allying with them, which is what happened in the Soviet Union. You had Islamists aligning with the communists, to take over. So you've always, these two extremes are allying with themselves right now. It's always the famous saying is they start with the Jews, then they go on to the Christians, the Sunday people, then they move on to the rest, and then they move on to you, So there's that famous saying. So they, always start with targeting the Jews, and then they'll move on to the next group of people. But it's very concerning when you have someone like Mulvaney who's become popularized, and you have mainstream politicians from the Democrat Party like Hakeem Jeffries, Governor Kathy Hochul, that endorsed him and supported him. A lot of celebrities, that model, I can't pronounce the name, Emily Ratajkowski or whatever she's called. These people endorsing somebody that's a communist, that hates Israel, that's been accused of spreading anti-Semitism. It's very, very concerning. And the fact that so many people don't see it, they think, oh, this is a great guy who's going to give us, cheaper housing, free healthcare. It sounds great on paper. Oh, free bus passes, free this, but somebody's going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Who's going to pay for it? And now suddenly you've got all of the wealthy New Yorkers fleeing to Florida and to other states. And, so who's going to pay for all this? So it sounds great on paper, but if you look at the history of socialism, communism, it's never, ever worked in a single country.
And it's failed
always led
time
to suffering. And, but the far left are so deranged, and they're not reasonable people. You can't have a conversation with them. They're zombies.
Yeah.
It's like they're possessed. So I think it's very, very concerning. And of course you have Minneapolis, which is also concerning, what's going on there. It's like mini Somalia because
it's a tribal blood war over there.
It's crazy right now. And, you've got the recent elections. The mayor, Omar Fateh, who is Somali American, lost out to Jacob Frey. And then you've got the Jacob Frey learning how to speak Somali to please the voters. And, it's America. Come on, it shouldn't be like this. American values need to be protected. And America's always been the land of the free. It's always been a place where everybody can be here and, live along together and stuff. But when you've got a certain group of people trying to take over, that is a problem. And obviously what's happened in New York now is extremely concerning. And, the UK is seeing that. London's, got a bad mayor. Lots of European countries got a lot of problems right now. So it should be a concern for everyone.
Man, it's a hot mess. On the bright side, So glad I got to see you today.
Thanks so much.
What are you working on? Where can people check you out? The title of your book. Do you have a new book in the works? What's going on?
So I don't have a new book in the works right now, but my book, Gender Madness, is kind of talking about all this woke culture and the dangers of gender transitions and how young people are sucked into the kind of identity crisis from TikTok, from social media, from the education system. So it's really kind of part personal journey, part trying to help young people learn to find confidence, learn to love themselves, and also a lot of research in the book that's talking about the percentages of people that are transitioning and the percentages that regret it and they go through the surgeries, and I think it's something important. So it's Gender Madness, available at all bookstores, and then people can obviously follow my advocacy work on Twitter, on X, Oli London TV.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Well, Oli, thanks again for coming in. And cousins, thank you for tuning in for another episode of Respectfully. Be sure to check out Oli London everywhere that he is on the internet. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.